Good morning, everyone. Why are you seated on the floor? Is that the only way that you can control yourself from not sleeping? Okay, let me just do a quick scan and check. As I do my scan, I'm actually focusing on a lot of y'all who I have not seen in tutorial sessions. My memory is pretty good. So as I scan out and see, I'm going to want to know why you're missing tutorial sessions. And that also directly and indirectly affects your assignment. So unless you have a very, very valid reason, my advice to you is not to miss the tutorial sessions. That's the only way that I can support you in terms of your understanding for the module. Yeah, so I think you know who you are. Some of y'all were not around last week. Maybe you could tell me later on when I see you in the tutorial sessions to be just honest with me. Okay, your headphones off, my dear. Headphones off, please. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, we all okay with the attendance? Hang on, let me just do a quick scan. Sweetheart, can you take off your cap, please? The girl behind. Ask her to take off her cap. I just want to see who she is. You're in this class? Are you in this class? Yeah, okay. Some faces. Are you new in this class? No. You're new? Not you, la darling. Why are you nodding? The girl in the cap. Are you new in this class? Can I have your name? Are you in Principles of Software Engineering? Hi. She doesn't understand English. Okay. That's a point up. Okay. So, if you're new in this class, I can't help you with your grouping. You have to find your own grouping, right? You can't come in the 5th week and suddenly say, I'm new and one group's okay. You settle it up yourself. And you know how challenging it is in terms of groupings, okay? So speak to me if you're interested, and that's the only way that I can lead on to, I better not trip on you, huh? Okay? So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to accomplish 2 things in this limited time. I'm going to introduce to you Agile. It's a particular type of development strategy, and I'm going to go into trying to understand how you derive a class diagram from a use case diagram. Okay, so this week's objective is going to be the transition from use case diagram. So if you've been doing the tutorial exercise, you will be able to, from a synopsis or maybe just generally, you're able to create use cases. For those of y'all who have tried the tutorial work, you do know that your use cases only deals with the top level view of the system, as in what it does, right? The how it does it part will come in the consecutive diagrams as we are going to go through, right? So use case, again, is a top level view. Today we're going to see how you do a transition from a use case to a class diagram. Then knowing what a class diagram is and knowing how to create the class diagram, we will follow through from that. But before that, I'm going to introduce to you a particular type of development methodology that is taking a lot of presence in today's software development infrastructure. It is actually called Agile development. Okay, so we're going to run through a few slides of Agile development, and then we will go into the understanding of class diagrams, right? So this is this week. Now, let's try to first go back to the, now remember lecture 1, I introduced you to the traditional software development. The traditional software development deals with starting from the very stage of problem, directive opportunities where you do a preliminary investigation, you go on to your analysis, where you do your fact-finding and your requirements determination, you design, you do your development, or you develop, you perform a testing, right? And then you deploy, you maintain, right? You support, and don't forget your documentation. So that's the traditional way, right? And that was used, still being used, right? And there are many other software development strategies such as Spiral, right? You have got the object-oriented method called the Rational Unified Process Modeling, which is the RUP. And you also got something that's taking headway a lot today. Why? Because of the problem the traditional methods had. The traditional method had a challenging time dealing with changing user requirements. Every time you speak to the user, you think the requirements are clear and cut off, and then you move to the next stage, which is fact-finding. You start to realize your user keeps on coming and telling you, no, actually we want this. No, actually we need to add this. No, actually something new has come up. So changing requirements keeps on going into a circle. And there's a lot of time that people spend here. And the problem with traditional is, I hope I'm not spinning, okay. The problem with traditional is you have a cutoff. You need to cut off. That means you have to say, stop, we cannot accept anymore because we need to go into design. Because it needs to go into a sequence. Whatever I design, I have to go and feed to my developers. Don't interrupt because I'm here. It's very structured. Traditional method is very structured. Waterfall method is very structured. So it's the question of, are we making the developer's life easy, or are we here in the industry to meet user requirements, aka customers, aka client? Which one is the preference? I'm sorry, the money comes from the clients, right? So you have to meet their user requirements. So hence, today, new methodologies have come in place, right, to solve what we call changing requirements. And some of these, the most prominent methodology that has played a part in adapting, customizing, and working with what we call changing requirements is what we call agile. Agile, it comes from the word agility. Agility is, you know, whatever that comes to you, right? You can take it, you can adopt it, you can produce it and deliver. You can't, I go to the competitor. That's it. That is agile development. But agile started off, right? This is basically a brief out on agile, right? So it started off with another method called rapid application development, right? So in agile, the system is developed as a series of versions or increments with stakeholders involved in version specification evaluation. So there is a frequent delivery of new versions for evaluation. So what traditional was doing was, traditional was saying, okay, we're working only on version 1, right? And then when I go into design, when the user says, no, I've got changing requirements, no, keep that for version 2. Right? And that was not very feasible. The question is, you work with me or you work in comfortability of your processes? No, we want this feature to be included in this version. Traditional didn't allow that. That's why traditional kept on running into full development, and then after 1-2 years, only the new versions will come in. Now, that was too long of a waiting process. So with Agile, what happens is, we work on a complete, but the thing about Agile is we are working actually on all the versions, but we are releasing it slowly. So while I work on version 1, yeah, no doubt there are revisions in version 1, but you know, version 2 is already ready, but just waiting for release. So that's what we mean by Agile, whereby, you know, you have got a series of increments. And the increments are worked parallelly, so actually the complete system is divided into its different versions. It's just that the release comes a little bit more later. So while you're using version 1, actually they're already in version 4. They're working in development version 4. It's just that they're waiting for market release, right? Ready for people to adopt the new working software. So in Agile, right, it is what we call also plan-driven, right? Plan-driven is your requirements engineering, where you work with your clients, right, whereby they specify their requirements, you design, and then if they are changing, you keep on going into. So it works with plan-based. That means you've already planned that if you do a cutoff of their changing requirements, the plan is to roll on the next version, slowly roll it and adapt it to the either the current, again on management, right? Whether you want to adapt it to the current or you want to leave it to the next particular version. But you don't say no to changing requirements. You keep on accepting it. So now, the challenge here is what? People. The challenge here is you as a designer, developer, you can't turn around and say, no, I can't accept it. No, it's going to be tough. No, you have to work with the changing requirements. And that's an attitude. Right? You can't come from the old school where, no, there needs to be a cutoff. If you say you are an agile developer, that means every time you're ready to work with the clients for changing requirements. Right? And you don't get affected emotionally as well as your work. So sometimes you get irritated because, you know, I mean, here you are working on. So that's why certain tools that you use will accommodate, right, that change. Or if at all there is a required cutoff, you do a cutoff, but it works within that allowable scope. Okay? So when you look at plan-driven, this is the requirements changing, right? Okay, when you look at agile, you keep on going into circles, right? This one creates a version, locks it down. This one keeps on going into a pool of adaptability, right? So when you look at plan-driven approach, right, it is based around separate development with the outputs to be produced at each stages planned. Not necessarily waterfall, right? Plan development can also be incremental. So plan, very traditional, would be waterfall, but it also can be spiral model. It can also be any incremental method. But agile, specification, design, implementation, testing are interleaved, and the output from the development process are decided through this keyword called negotiation. So in agile, the users, the clients are very involved. They even can contribute to their opinion, right, of even the codes if they are technically very capable. Today, a lot of the development methodology taken on by organizations adopt agile. But agile actually comes from this thing called rapid application. Where's the slide on rapid application? Wait, test first, customer involvement. Hang on, pair programming. There is a slide that says rapid application. Hang on, 1 minute, 1 second. Yeah, this one. Agile comes from rapid application. So what is rapid application? Rapid application is the delivery of is now often the most important requirements, right? So fast changing requirements, softwares evolve, right? And in rapid, you can adopt plan-driven, small-scale plan-driven, or large-scale agile. Because in rapid, what you do is you build the prototype. And in rapid, it's either a reuse prototype or you use a throwaway prototype. So rapid application evolved first. Because, you know, you can get the requirements, you can construct the screen, you can physically build the application, throw the prototype to the user. And then in that you have versions. Because you have multiple versions and then you throw away all the rest and you take the final version, that actually is the birth of Agile. So Rapid usually are meant for smaller projects. But now because Rapid produced better results of acceptability, they have converted Rapid actually into Agile. So Agile is actually the same process, right? But it's just that, it's termed Agile. It produces one particular prototype. It doesn't do a lot of throwaways, right? But it adopts changing requirements. Changing requirements produce that one prototype. And the requirements can come very close, right? And then you work parallel in development of the prototype. So there's a lot of write-ups on Agile. People adopt Agile. People work only in Agile framework with Agile frameworks. And today a lot of developers are pro-Agile because they have to work with client requirements and meeting their needs. It's no more clients keep quiet, we will do what's best. It's more of you get involved with us and we clear your requirements very, very, to the minute level. And hence we deliver something that you accept, not something that you're not comfortable or you have resistance to work with, right? So one type of Agile development, let's go to, you can read all of this. So the principle, number one, you look at the number one principle. They work with the principle of software engineering. Customers, right, speak language. That's the principles of software. See, it tries to overcome what traditional had as a problem called resistance to change. So when the older systems, 20 years ago, when technology came as a change, because technology was not the forefront yet, users could resist. No, we don't think technology is going to provide a solution. Now that resistance slowly became day-to-day tasks that needed to be automated. That's 20 years ago. Today, if you are not automated, people look at you a little bit differently, right? Moving 10 years ahead, 30 years, it's more of if the customers don't get involved, and if the customers don't work with you on what they want, and if you don't deliver to the customers and meet their changing needs, not meet their needs, meet their changing needs like this, then you're not a software house that we will work with. We have options outside. So customer involvement throughout the development, the role is to provide and prioritize new requirements and to evaluate the iterations of the system. Keep on providing new requirements, right? And as which that it iterates to be developed upon the requirements that are cleared. So number one, and because you have got involved closely throughout and provide and prioritize not system requirements. Look at the word here. New system requirements. Today they'll give you system requirements. Tomorrow they'll give you new system requirements, correct? Because you allow that, it's called an incremental delivery. So can you imagine for a little while the overlaps that will happen, right? Yesterday was system requirements. Today new. What's new is old tomorrow, new ones, correct or not? So there's a lot of overlap. So you as a developer, you have to be comfortable working in an agile environment. That's why when you write your profile summary in your CV, agility is a skill set that they are looking for. That means if today they tell you to take on a task, and tomorrow they tell you, no, the client has cancelled it, we are moving into project B instead of project A, you can't cry foul about it. Because you said, agility is my skill set. So, any change, right, you are adaptable. But there are people who say they're agile, but it's very difficult for them to accommodate because they can't plan very well, right? They can't change immediately. For them, it's a little bit more of a structured approach, where everything needs to be defined first, then lock off the define, switch off. Don't disturb me when I'm designing. Now, that's going to be a bit of a blinkered approach. And today, many talents in the software industry, they're looking for agility. And many other, see, look at this one. Customer involvement, and look at this, people, not process. So, the skills of the development team should be recognized and exploited. Team members should be left to develop their own ways of working without prescriptive processes. So you don't tell them how to do it. You take all the changing requirements, you ask them how many days you need. 5 days? Okay, 5 days. That's it. You come back in 5 days with an outcome. You don't control, you don't hover, you give them a lot of what? Independent skill set that they work with. And there's a lot of accountability. Correct? So these are the skill sets that you are learning here in this environment. And that is what they're looking for outside. So if a project manager were to ask you, this is your task, these are the 2 clients you have to work with in an agile framework, right? Given this requirement for now, given the scope that they might expand to, presuming, right? How many days do you require for you to develop this outcome? Comes back to you with 6 days, right? On point, 6 days he finishes it. I won't ask him, maybe on the 2nd day, are we on track? No. Empowerment is there. That is the attitude they are looking for. Because of him, I have to bend down. Okay, all right? Embrace change and maintain simplicity, okay? So these are a few points, right? So one of the technique is called, it's like, you know, like you have extreme sports, right? You know, you have extreme sports, right? It's called So extreme programming, very influential agile method developed in the late 1990s. Extreme programming takes an extreme approach to iterative. New versions may be built several times per day. Increments are delivered to customers every 2 weeks. All tests must be run for every build, and the build is only accepted if test runs successfully. Agile environment requires a very strong product owner. In any agile framework, you must assign a product owner. What is the role of the product owner? The product owner works with the developer, the designer, the architect, which is the database designer, right? You have got the front screen designer, you've got the database designer, conceptual, logical, you have the developer, you have the tester, the quality. The role of the product owner is, because you have to build many versions very fast, within a day you'll have many versions, because requirements are changing, what, right? So you have so many different versions. Who's going to control the versions? Are you going to release the wrong versions? No, the product owner, what he does is, he manages the team. He oversees that every time changing requirements, it's communicated. You have any challenges? You have challenges? Requirements have come in. Have you relied? So he's the person who mediates the whole team. And you will have multiple product owners. Product owners can manage multiple, smaller, agile teams. Right? You understand? Okay? So, you can read about all of this. This is for your notes, right? Some of the practices of extreme, the most obvious, small release. Small release, that means, you know, it is small little features and functions. Small little features and functions, release it. Sure. The client tells you this is what, give me 1 hour, I'll show you it. Anything to add? Keep on adding, right? So, visualization is very, very clear. Again, coming back to the fact that it actually came a little bit from rapid application. Rapid application creates prototype. What you want, I quickly go and build it, I show it to you. It's a prototype. No, remove 20%, take out the 20%, add in what you change. No, remove, take out 10%, add in what you want to change. So when the user sees what he wants, it's a little bit more, okay, I like the involvement, right? And I can see what I say. And that works out better than, I'll see you in 6 months, I will bring your solution. That's not going to be feasible today, right? People want to see. It's like all of us, right? We are very impatient. If there's an update, you want to immediately see it, right? If the page loads, you'll be thinking, what the hell, what's wrong? You know, why isn't the page loading? We are impatient. So imagine we are vast mass users, right? Imagine if you are customizing it for a client, how demanding they will be. And that are the people that you have to work with outside. Demanding users who want immediate attention to their needs. So you have to incorporate programming practices that are built on fundamentals where if you want fast, okay, I give you small release, I give you simple designs in a prototype. I will test, right, and I'll run, I load, use it, right, do a small pilot of the small little feature, okay, acceptable, keep it aside. Let's look at the next feature. And then you combine it all together later on. Okay, right? So you can read about all of this, right? I've given you a brief out on Agile. Now, we're going to go to class diagrams now, okay? You can read up. There's a lot of notes here. I'll give you a small task next week on Agile. I'll give you a research study to do, and then you can present to me what your understanding is about on Agile, based on the little fundamentals that I fed you with today, okay? Now, no doubt, this set of slides that you see, so just before we move on, right, in Agile, there's this thing called tests first. So in tests first, right, what you do is you create what we call a test-driven development. So test-driven development is writing the test before code clarifies the requirement. So you perform the testing of your data as and when before you are going to release. So before you show it to the client, you test it and you visually get the feedback of the bug. So if there's no bug, then you test the second version and then you finalize. So testing, you cannot run away from it. But the only difference between traditional testing is traditional testing accumulates everything, right? Agile testing, before I show it to the client, I will test and then he runs a use of it. So I have to make sure that when the client tests it, the bugs are all removed, right? You can't test a system using the client. You have to test it as it's part of the throwaway model kind of requirement, okay? So we'll go into testing a little bit more, right? So this is an example of a test case description. What is the test? The test is dose checking. What's the input? That's a process. So this is the description of the input, a number in mg representing single dose, a number representing number. The test tests for inputs where the single dose is correct, but the frequency is too high. So these are all testing features that you do. What is the output that's expected? Okay, or error message indicating that the dose is outside. So when the user tests, you've already done this test, but you get a multiple user to test it, so there is a potential that there will be an error message that activates, because there would have been a mistake in the entry, whether your system is built with integrity to validate. That shows whether or not your testing mechanism worked very well. So you are supposed to find 99% of the bugs, right, to your best, in fact 100, but we always leave 1%, right, that will miss out. So potentially that 1%, the user tested, you find the error, but it's all right, it's before release, right? So before release, at least you incur avoidance and prevention costs. If not, it's going to be a failure post-release cost, and that's going to really cost your branding, right, as an organization. And then imagine, you got to roll that back in, and then people might not have the best regards of your services, right, based on the history. Okay, so test automation, right? You can read about all of these pair programming, right? That's part. I'm just going to move a little bit more faster. Now, if you realize the lecture slides for this module is a little bit different. For every chapter, for the first 4 to 5 chapters, we teach you a bit of theory, and then we jump to the UML diagrams. So last week, there was a bit of theory, and then we jumped into the first diagram, which is use case. Today, there's a bit of theory, but we come back to the UML diagramming. So we've got a few diagrams to learn, right? So today, we're going to look at class diagram, okay? Now, generally, this is how a class diagram looks like. And if we were to go a little bit more deeper, I've done all the briefing of the class diagram in your tutorial groups, right? So the most important thing you have to understand is if you've done databases, the class diagram is very similar to an entity relationship diagram, right? Okay? So what it shows in the class diagram is very important characteristics, which is the class name, you have the attribute, you have the operation, right? So it could be anything. It could be a person, it could be a thing, right? It could be or a place, right? So it could be any categorization, right? So you also have properties, you have attributes, you have operations, right? And the representation of a class comes in it would look like a square, right? But this is not, again, good practice, good practice, right? The squares should come typically in a nice square form. It shouldn't be rectangle. Good practice. Yes, you're going to tell me, Dr. Hema, I've seen some websites, it's a bit of a rectangle. So I'm saying, yes, websites will have, just like how some have circles instead of ovals for use case, and some websites, they clutter the use case everywhere. Now remember, not all websites use good conventions. So my advice to you, when you draw your class diagram, the first thing, just like how there's a difference between a circle and oval, difference between practice class diagram where you draw a square and try to avoid a rectangle. Why? Very simple. Class names shouldn't be very long. Class names are short names. Right? Okay? So you try to practice it. Right? Try. I'm not going to penalize you for marks in squares and rectangles in the exam. But for use case, if you draw a bubble instead of an oval, yes, I penalize. Because there's a very distinct difference to it. Okay? All right? So what I'm going to take you through now is, I know there are slides. But the first question you will ask me is, okay, miss, we've learned use case. How do we convert a use case to a class? There is a relationship. Now, to do that, what I've done is, I'm going to share with you this research paper. I will share with you. You don't have to take a screenshot of it. I will share. Every material that I use in my lectures, I will share with you. Even if I don't, I know you'll come after me. Right? Okay? And the class reps for all classes, come after me. Okay? Miss, don't forget to put up, and stuff like that. Okay. This research paper, no doubt it's quite old, but when was UML created? A long time ago, right? So I've been using this for many classes, and from this research paper, students are able to understand what's the transition between from a use case to a class. Can you all follow me for a little while in this research paper? and then you can read it. I'm not going to run through the whole paper, but I'm going to explain to you a little bit about the transition, okay? Now, so in this paper, right, they have divided the steps. So the first step, listen very carefully, this is very important, okay, right? So the first step is you need to determine the goal of each use case. Then it goes down to the second step, right? 2.1, 2.2, step 2, identify entities using the goal. So in your level, which is year 1, all you have to do is look at the goal of the use case, and within the use case, what do you think would be entities that you need to create? For example, you look at this. Okay, look at this. You have an actor called cost admission or cost administrator. All right, cost admission is a department, right? You can have cost administrator, no problem. Okay, and then you have another actor that is the academic department. Someone will put up your hands and say, Miss, where's the student? You know, yeah, can put an actor, student also, no problem. But I'm just showing you an example. Okay. So there is a use case called enroll cost. Now, the first thing you got to do, in use case, you're just drawing the use case, you're connecting, right? The association, right? Correct or not, right? That's it. But to perform a transition from the use case to the class, the first question you must ask is, what is the output of this use case for the cost admission department? So if the course admission is going to enroll the course, what is the outcome of it? The outcome is the input and the output, right? Okay? So if I were to course administrations, enroll a course, the outcome of my course to me would be I get a new registration for the course, correct? For the academic department, the course gets a new registration, right? You register for bachelor's or whatever, right? Or principles of software engineering, right? The same registration, a new registration goes to the academic department. That's the outcome of the enroll. So when you think of the goal, so that's the first step. I determine the goal of each use case. So once you determine the goal already, you can start to think about, okay, what and how does that use case with the goal, right, collaborate with the actors? So if you look at this diagram, right, inside it, see, this is the, she's drawn the oval a bit bigger, right? So for new registration, what would be the entities that needs to be created? I need maybe a course, right? I would need a course. I might not want a student. I might put a student as an actor, but student for them doesn't play a role here, right? It's not, the scenario, student is not an actor. The scenario here is the details of the student needs to be an entity. So this is the scenario. This is just an example, okay? So in this case, in order for me to generate a new registration, I need a course, I need student, and then I need the registration. So once only then you have got the course that's enrolled or the student enrolled for the course, and then so the student enrolls for the course gets a new registration that goes to the course administrator. Am I right? Right? So because the student has enrolled, the student has actually created a registration, and then new registration, because it's the student and you need to give him timetable, it goes to the academic department. So a registration goes to the academic department, but a new registration for the course goes to the course administrator. So you have to think of the logic, right? Whereby step 3, specify entities as classes and their features as attributes. And so here you have got simple attributes such as a code. You have got attribute of code and a title for the course, right? Correct? So step 4 is specify the references between entities as association relationship between classes. So when I form the association, I will also talk about the multiplicity, right? One and only one, or minimum of 0, or I can do many, because that actually creates the restriction and the availability of such feature. So a student can enroll for how many courses? Student must at least enroll for one or many, correct or not? Right? So if you go into the system, the student doesn't enroll, maybe there is a back end that says, hey, no student has enrolled for this course. Right? So maybe you'll tell me, potentially, there might be 0, but it's a bit stupid. How can you create a course and nobody enroll? If that's the case, you might want to remove the course, correct or not? Yes, you have to think like that. You have to think logic. Follow? Yeah, I'm the actor, I'm the actress, I'm the advertisement, I'm the villain, you know, you're all watching a movie, right? Okay, am I doing a good job? Good actor, right? Okay, great. Okay, step 5. So, you see, there's another one called create a course. So, the academic department creates the course, a new course is created. So, for the course, right, maybe that use case, so I can actually ask you, draw me a use case of all of this. Then you can see all the potential use cases that can come out. But in this example, I am creating an entity of a course. When I create a course, I need a course leader. The course needs to be assigned a course leader or like a module leader, right? Okay? So how do you find these entities? Find out what is the first step, which is what's the goal? If you know what's the goal, you can already know what are the entities that you need inside. If you already know what are the entities, you can start to think what would be the attributes, the potential operation that will take place between these entities. That is the key to deriving a class diagram from a use case diagram. And it goes further. See? Right? This is how you build. So you go to step 5, collaboration. So step 4, which is forming the association relationship, escape for a while, okay? In class diagram, there are very important associations, right? And what you need to do is you need to, wait, hang on, I need to subscribe to some. So there are a lot of relationship associations that you need to understand first, okay? Now you know inheritance, but I'm going to explain to you 2 very confusing associations. One called, I would say relationships, one called composition, okay? Pay very close attention, huh? Aggregation and composition, right? So these associations are very easy, but aggregation and composition is quite difficult to understand. Now, very simple, right? Let's look at composition. Composition is where when you have a mandatory, where you have, we should be more specific and use composition, where in addition to part relationship, there's a strong life cycle dependency between the two, meaning that when class A is deleted, class B is also deleted. That means composition is head, hand, leg has to be composed of or be part of a person. It cannot stand on its own. You understand? So these 3, head, hand, leg, just think of it this way. It has to be related to. But aggregation, it can be independent. Okay? So the independent one is called aggregation. So the engine, right? Independent, the engine can stand on its own what? Right? It doesn't need to be a part of a car on its own. Right? A wheel can be on its own. You have people who are selling wheels, you know, Continental Tire, they're on their own what? Correct or not, right? doesn't have to be part of a car. So that is the time and place when you will use aggregation versus composition. The difference between the arrows are, it's actually not an arrow, it's a diamond shape. The aggregation is an empty, the composition is darkened diamond. So think of it that way. Composed of, I must have, meaning it has to be dark. Right? Aggregation, it can be independent, right? It's just a clear diamond. This is usually the two. Inheritance, nobody has a problem with it. You know that inherits, it's part of. Right? You know, dependency, yes, the dotted line, there is some dependency, right? So all these associations, you must understand first before you go into, right? So this is generalization. See, what are the two types of bank account? You can have savings account, you have credit card. So this is what we call generalization. And you must remember, for aggregation and composition, oh my God, 4 more minutes. 1 point before you go. Aggregation and composition, the arrow must go from the child to the parent. Wait. Before the person comes, before the person comes and hover on me. Okay. This one, wrong. You got it right? The arrow should be the other way around. Okay, I want to show you the wrong one. This one, the other way around. Got it? Okay, so that's all for today. Right? I will brief you out a little bit more. I'll bring these 2 documents back up for tutorial classes. And this is very important, guys. Part of your exam, part of understanding how to create entity, right? And part of the whole picture of software design and development. Okay, before you go, I know I got 4 minutes. They took 3 minutes for me just now. So I'm going to use 3 minutes from whoever is going to be disadvantaged. So this week, for all the tutorial sessions, I'm going to check your 2 use case exercises. In fact, I think in total there's 4, right? 4 as in 2 questions in the last week, and in the middle of the week, all the team leads, Mia, Rana, Choi, and Amar, you have all shared with your groups the additional use case, right? Okay. So for today's tutorial, we'll run through the answer. Halfway in the week, maybe Thursday, I will post you class diagram question. Okay? And agile theory question. Then you can take it up. Okay? Right? And that should be going. And now, I would like to see 2 groups from the Wednesday's tutorial outside for a short while. Your group, you are the team lead, and your group, you are the team lead. Can I see both your groups outside for a minute? Yeah? Just we congregate outside. The rest of y'all, thank you very much. I will see you all during tutorial sessions within the week. Have a lovely week ahead, right? Take care.